Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, it's, not one of the videos that you necessarily want to make. It's more one that I feel I should make. The circumstances of making a video like this is not something that I want to have to do. But it's something that I feel is important to talk about and, have an input and say in the situation. So, essentially, after the recent events, the recent shootings in Texas and Ohio, there was the once again blame to video games for these incidents. Now, these things were terrible events that happened over the weekend, and there's something that happens way too often in America. Almost daily, there's something that comes up along in the news of some sort of shooting somewhere, and it's very sad to see things like that happening near daily in this country. And the same excuse always gets brought up of it's video games, or just saying it's mental health without doing anything about it. And in these certain situations, there's a majority of the people that do have some sort of mental issue of the way they were brought up with their family and things that happened and events in their life. But to just say it's mental health and sort of group a generic topic, group a generic topic, say a generic topic, sort of group everybody in that together. It's the same thing with video games. There may be one person who's inspired by something they do in a video game, but to say video games in general are the cause for every shooting and everything that happens. I looked back at a video, because I know I talked about this topic previously. I looked back at the video. It was from 2015, and I wrote in the description how it was about the terrorist attacks that happened in Paris in 2015, and how those were blamed by video games when those were by terrorists. They weren't inspired by video games, they were radicalized. And that's a similar thing we see here. It's people radicalized through, radicalized by white supremacy, basically, is the way to put it. I believe the one in Texas was inspired by white supremacy. I don't think that they know the exact motive of the one in Ohio yet, but the one in Texas was inspired by white supremacy. They went into a Walmart and shot people that most of the people were Mexican that they were shooting. I believe that was the target. And there's certain factors you can look at and blame for that. If you're the leader of the country, the president says this group of people are bad, it's going to radicalize people. It happens throughout history. If the person in power is sort of implying that these people are bad, there's going to be attacks against them. It's throughout history. You can just look back. The most obvious example is Nazi Germany. I don't want to necessarily compare that to the situation now, but it's a similar thing where they targeted Jews, and you would see people attacking Jews in their businesses and things like that. It's not to that extent, and hopefully it doesn't get to that extent, but if it's supported by the leader of the country, then you see that. And I don't want to compare Donald Trump to Hitler. That's not the point here. That's a very extreme comparison. There are things you can look and compare, but it's a very extreme comparison to say. So I don't really want to make that comparison. But again, there are things you can look at and make that comparison, but that's not what I want to do here in the video. That's not what I'm looking at. The issue ultimately comes back to guns and them being very accessible within the country. Some states more than others. I know here in Connecticut there's like a limit on the amount of bullets you can have in your gun and things like that. But I mean, you can easily go around that rule. But I know things like that exist here. But things won't change with guns when these things happen so frequently, and people are just always diverting blame to something else, saying the gun didn't pull the trigger. What? Yeah, but the video games didn't play themselves. Like, somebody had to control the game, just like somebody's controlling the gun. So if you're blaming video games making somebody violent, then it's that same type of thing. The video games aren't just going to sit there and play and make somebody violent. You have to, control the game just like somebody's controlling the gun. So that's bad argument, because again, with the gun, somebody's going to use it. It's not an object that can control itself, obviously, but there are multiple instances where this happens, where somebody uses a gun and shoots a lot of people. And I think the best example for change not happening is looking in 2012 with Sandy Hook, and that one hit a little bit closer for me, being in the state, happening in Connecticut, like just a couple hours away. In 2012, I was in school when that happened. Like, I was at school, and I came home when it was the news saying that this happened, and I was just like, I didn't know how to react to that, being like, they're in the same state. Like, you see these things happen in like the news, and it's like, oh, this happens at this state, and it's like, that's sad and unfortunate, and how'd that happen? And then when it happens in your own state, it's kind of like, whoa. And in 2012, I was going to school. Like, I remember one kid didn't come to school the next day because his parents thought that was going to happen at my school. It was a very weird time. And seeing that on like local news as like the main story for days, it was very weird. But to have something like that where it was 26 people got killed, I believe 20 of them were kids. I think that's what it was, and 6 of them were like faculty. The fact that 20 kids that I believe were like kindergarten or first grade got killed at school and nothing changed, that's like, I think the biggest turning point to like really realize nothing's gonna change is when a bunch of very young kids get killed at school. And after that, we had to do so many lockdown practices, and I know they were just schools across the country. I remember it was high school. I started high school in the fall of 2013. And I remember there we had one little glass in each window, and we do a lockdown. You had to close all the blinds, and the teacher would put a piece of foam over the window and then shut off the light, and we'd have to sit there in the classroom for, it seemed like forever. And they'd like, somebody would shake the door, and it was like, it was very, I don't know, it was very strange, the situation to have to do, and have to practice something like that is just not something kids should have to do at school. You should be able to just go to school and not have a fear of getting killed. It's the same thing with, going to the store. People should be able to go to Walmart without having to think, am I going to get killed? Or, going wherever. There's a festival in California the other week. It's a garlic festival. People should really go to a festival, enjoy it, and not think, am I going to get killed here? And that's a thing that, happens in this country more than any other country. It's just crazy, the blame deflecting to everything else besides guns. You can look at what happened in New Zealand when they had the church shooting. I think it was this year, was it? It was the beginning of this year? So many of these things happen that you sort of lose track of when each one happens. I believe that one was the beginning of this year. And right after it, New Zealand was like, yeah, we're done with having guns. Like, and that was it. They started to just turn them in and things like that. People would turn in their guns. And I feel like the thing is with America is it's written into the Constitution. The Second Amendment is about the right to bear arms. And people always just bring that up. But the thing about that was made when they wrote the Constitution. That was like 1780 something. 82, was it? 81? Something like that. Like, that's from hundreds of years ago. It was, at that time, guns weren't, you still died of guns, but they weren't like crazy high-powered things that can cause a real lot of damage. You'd have to do a shot and reload, and it was a lot different. And the other thing about it is it made sense more at that time. The argument of having a gun to protect yourself from the government that people use as well is irrelevant. If the government wants to destroy you and kill you, they can. Very easily. You having a gun's not going to do anything. If the government wants to kill you, they can drone strike you and you die. Or they can just send a bunch of people and you will die. It's not gonna protect you. Having a gun is not gonna protect you from the government. Now, I think that guns in general should be banned or more restricted. The only time that I think is appropriate for ownership of a gun, there's two different situations. If you're hunting, that's your thing. You go hunt, you go get food. Whether you do it to get food for your family or do it to get food to, make money off of it. That's a perfect example of owning a gun. Hunting, great example. The other time is if you want to have a gun to have in your house to protect you and your family from somebody coming in, like an intruder, into your house. I feel like that's an appropriate situation to own a gun. But you don't need to have crazy guns to just own because you want to. I think for hunting and for protecting your house and your family at home is the appropriate time to own a gun. Any other time, you don't really need it. So I think overall, to ban a majority of guns or really, really restrict the way that you can get them is what you have to do. The people that sell the guns, like the gun shop owners, they're not selling them to have these events happen, and you can tell lots of times they feel bad about the situation. The gun from their store caused these events. So overall, that's that. Now we can get into the video games part specifically. Every time that there is a shooting, it's a majority of the blame goes to... Well, first you got to find out where the person's from. If they're from America and they're white, it's video games. If they're not from America or they're not white, it's mostly because of immigration and letting bad people in. If a terrorist comes in and does something, you want to blame the people for what they do because of their race. That's what happens majority of the time. Now, most of these shootings at places are done by white men. Now, the thing with that is a majority of them, either there are mental issues, like again being raised by their, having a rough life when they're raised, or through some form of like white supremacy, like I said. Anytime there's an incident like this, you can typically trace it to some type of radicalization, whether it is white supremacy or, that's typically actually it. Or, there's other factors, but it's typically some sort of radicalization, disliking a group or supporting something, like, just crazy. There was the Charlottesville incident last year, 2 years ago, where the person drove their car into the crowd of people and killed somebody. And that was part of white supremacy. And again, the shooting at the Walmart the other day, white supremacy. But the thing with that is it's typically the blame again falls something else. Deflecting from gun ownership and how guns cause these incidents. Ownership, people owning guns causing these issues. Or, people just say mental health and don't do anything about it. Or you get the great people that go on TV and say it's video games. Which I have Twitter pulled up here with the trend today. I was thinking about making a video, I'm like, I don't really want to talk about the subject. I really just feel like it's not something that I just want to talk about. I don't know. I feel like I should talk about it because it's good to bring up, but I just feel like it's difficult to talk about, and sometimes I just want to avoid talking about it. But again, people avoiding talking about it isn't helping the situation, so I feel like this is the best thing to do. So I load up Twitter today. I woke up, and I went to go take a shower, and, when I wake up, I always go check my phone. So I'm in the bathroom looking at the phone, and I go on Twitter, and I see the hashtag, video games are to blame, trending, and I'm like, oh my god. So the thing with this is it's mostly people making memes about the people who blame video games. I seen a good one the other day as well. Let me just pull it up here. I have my iPad down here. This is the one that I really liked. I'm going to try to show it and see if it pops up. It's not going to pop up that well. Will it? I wonder if I fixed the screen. Yeah, there you go. This meme I really appreciate. Politicians. Video games create psychopathic killers that shoot places up. Me, playing Minecraft, feeling horribly guilty after killing a pixelated cow so I get some leather. And I'm like, that's it's very relatable. So we'll go through some of those tweets, but the main thing that I want to look at here is a chart that was tweeted out. It was like a picture chart type thing by Vox. I know Vox is sort of a meme media outlet, but they tweeted out a thing here showing how much money people spend on video games, not counting the hardware like consoles, controllers, or the computers, or all that stuff, basically what you play on. So just purely buying the games. The video game revenue per person. And also this, I guess, would contain the microtransactions, things like that. And then it shows how many gun deaths per 1,000 people. Now, the only thing about this that somebody had to claim was the video game revenues for 2019, and the gun deaths per 1,000 or 100,000 people is from 2017. And now the top country that spends the most money on video games, unsurprisingly, is South Korea, which spends, it shows here, about $150 per person for video game revenue for people buying games. And then the thing where they show the gun deaths, like it says 2017, and somebody's like, well, what if Korea didn't have the most video games bought in 2017, or most money spent? Which, first of all, they did. I guarantee you that South Korea spent the most money on video games in 2017. Secondly, that's a 2-year gap. It's not like we're bringing up data from 1980, saying this is how many people died to guns in 1980, and this is how many people bought video games in 2010. We're not doing that. It's a 2-year gap. So it was a pretty lame tweet from that person. So to look at this, I'll show it on here, but first I want to explain what it says. So video game revenue per person estimate for 2019. South Korea spent around $150, people did, on video games. The amount of gun deaths per 100,000 people in 2017 in South Korea was less than 1. You're probably looking at 0.2. Then we go to China, which is second, which looks like they spent probably about $130, $120 on video games in 2019. Then looking at the violent gun deaths in 2017 in China, it's again around 0.2. Then we go to America, which is third on the money spent on video games in 2019 per person. And we're around 110, so just a little bit less than China. But the gun deaths, those are way up. It's about 4.4 per 100,000 people. Then we go to UK, which is a little bit less than 100. The gun deaths are, again, 0.2. Then we go to Canada. Again, about the same as UK. Gun deaths are probably 0.5. We go to Germany. Probably about $80. Gun deaths, about 0.4. France, about $60. The gun deaths there look like they're probably 0.4. Spain, about $60. Gun deaths look like they're about 0.3. Italy, gun deaths 0.3. Money spent a little bit less than $50. But the main ones that I want to focus on here, also Japan's about $30 and gun deaths are about 0.2. So what this tells is that countries, overall for the purchase of video games, that Korea, China, UK, all the ones that are around America on that list, Canada, all spend a lot of money on video games, along with the United States. But the United States is the only country that even has more than one average gun death per 100,000 people. So the argument that video games cause violence right here goes out the window. You don't really have gun violence in these other countries. It's very, very rare, as you can see by this. It's not non-existent, but the number is like 0.2 per 100,000 people. I think there was a statistic that came out that said last year that Japan had 10 people get killed by a shooting in an entire year. And America had that in one day. So that's just a statistic right there. So I'm going to show you guys this chart real quick so you guys can just see what I was talking about. So here's the chart. As you guys can see, the amount of gun deaths in America are a lot higher than any other country, even though America's not the most purchase of video games. Now another thing, we'll go back to Twitter here. I believe there was a tweet where a guy went on the news. There's a bunch of these. I'll just find it here. There's a bunch of tweets. I don't think oh yeah, the lieutenant governor of Texas said that the what does it say? Okay, so it says Republican Texas Lieutenant Governor is calling for federal government intervention in video game industry, citing the Call of Duty reference in the terrorist manifesto. So, did the guy mention like Call of Duty in it? I don't know. Also, he wants people to pray more in school, so that's cool, which is not required or really allowed to be required. So it says the quote of this tweet said, "Video games are not the cause of what's happening in America. Video games are played worldwide, but the U.S. is the only country with this consistent crisis." And it says blaming Call of Duty is not the answer, which is true. Like the statistic chart we just looked at. These things aren't just happening, like, or the video games aren't just played in this country, is what I should say. These violent things with guns are happening in this country. Like, I don't know, like, why video games are always a consistent target. And again, you play a game. We'll take GTA, for example. You can drive over people in the street or on the sidewalk, and you can shoot people and steal their cars. But you don't see everybody that played GTA going out and stealing people's cars and running people over and shooting people on the sidewalk just because. You do it in a video game, but you don't do it in real life. It's so dumb to see this just be a thing. Oh, Call of Duty caused the shooting. Call of Duty did not cause the shooting. The person didn't just wake up and say, you know what? I played Call of Duty today. It'd be cool to go shoot a Walmart. That's not what happened. The person, again, was radicalized through white supremacy and thought, I own a gun because I can because I live in America. Let me go shoot up some Mexicans. That's what they thought. So, to blame video games and blame Call of Duty specifically because of a shooting is ignorant, and it's not helping the situation. And this shooting happened in this person's state. Like, you would think, oh, this happened in my state, I want to make a change. That happened, like I said, bringing up Sandy Hook earlier in the video. The people, the within the government that represent Connecticut were really like pushing to try to get things to change with guns after that happened. I remember that because it was all over the news. Here, in the state, they wanted to make a change. And here in Texas, the person's like, well, it's video games. Can't do anything about it. But that's not the case. If they mention Call of Duty one time in their thing, that's what you're going to pick to say, radicalize them. Not the fact that the president of the country, of the United States, said when he was first running that Mexico is not sending their best people, not the rapists and murderers. Like, that's what we're going to target, though, is video games? Alright. I don't know. It's just super obnoxious to see this. And it's just always the same thing. There's a shooting, let's blame video games. Also, there's one tweet here from a quote where it says the House Minority Leader in the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy from California, says shooting video games are a problem. And apparently from this tweet, which I'm going by as the quote from his thing that he went onto national TV on Fox News and said, was there are no mass shootings in Japan because there are no video games there. So, about that. Where's Nintendo from? Japan. Where's Sony from, which makes PlayStation? Japan. That's all I have to say to that. There are no mass shootings in Japan because there are no video games. 2 of the 3 consoles are made by Japanese companies. PlayStation and Nintendo systems are from Japan. The only one that's not is Xbox, made by Microsoft, which is from America. They all play the same games. Well, the Switch is a little different, but still. The Nintendo games are from Japan. They're having the Olympics come up, and they're having, like, Mario and, like, Pikachu are, like, half the promotion of the Olympics in Japan next year. This is just the most... Oh my god. There are no shootings in Japan because there are no video games. Half the systems are from there. More than half. 2/3 of them. Some of the games are developed in Japan. Oh my god. That'd be the same thing as saying there's no mass shootings in South Korea because they don't play video games. When they're the country that plays video games the most. That's the same type of thing. Look at a lot of the players in the Overwatch League. You know, we'll take that for example. There's like, I think there's 5 or 6 teams that are all Korean rosters. You have Seoul Dynasty, Vancouver Titans, New York Excelsior, London Spitfire, Florida Mayhem. I think... Well, Shanghai's all Korean except for 1 player from China. But, like... This is absolutely obnoxious. One person, this one here is a football reference, and I like this one. This person was in a joking tone said, I have to somewhat agree with the current criticism of video games, based on the fact they let you live your craziest fantasy, no matter how unrealistic they may be. I mean, look at my Jets record. And the Jets are 4-0. I'd love for the Jets to be 4-0. I'd be very happy. Yeah, this guy was playing Madden, and it looks like he has 4 wins and no losses as the Jets, and I can agree that's a wild fantasy to live out. Like, that's the type of thing. This is why you gotta go in and get some of them memes. Do we have anything else here that's good? But, like, it's just so obnoxious. Absolutely obnoxious. This says, video games are to blame for all the car accidents in the world caused by blue, green, and red turtle shells. This is where we get to the fun part. We just read the tweets that people can sort of meme this. This says, hashtag video games are to blame for violent society because we have to find something to blame instead of the individuals who committed the act. Oh, this is a good meme. I like this one. This says me looking at video game purchase rates and trying to find any mass shootings in South Korea. The correlation doesn't fit. This meme, I appreciate. I'm gonna like that one and retweet. Oh, this one's good. I like this meme. Yeah. Why would video games do this? Man. It says, thanks to Forza, I no longer drive on roads. Video games are to blame. It's got somebody crashing their Bugatti off the road in Forza. I like this one. It says, can't wait to spawn the wither so I can destroy my school. Minecraft Earth is gonna be good. Bring your milk. That's an interesting tweet. They said before the 90s, before video game systems were a thing in every home, the know-it-alls on the right blamed all the nasty rock and roll music we kids were listening to back in the day. Yeah, so... Oh, this one's a good meme as well. Let me see if I can find the thing. Okay, so this is a Twitter moment thing. So this is what Donald Trump said in a speech. He said, "We must stop the glorification of violence," Trump said, referencing what he called gruesome and grisly video games, and blaming mental health and troubled youth for recent mass shootings. And then he said, "Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun." So... if you say Mexicans are bad, and then somebody, as the leader of the country, you say Mexicans are bad, then somebody goes and does a mass shooting, and a majority of the people that kill are Mexican, and then white supremacy gets blamed, so it's kind of because of something you said, and then you blame video games. Alright. This one here says, video games are all about building friendships and community on a global scale. Fortnite and the gaming industry have no connection to mass shootings. Ignorance is rampant in the media. Now, as much as I have said negative things about Fortnite, I agree with this. It doesn't matter if it's Fortnite or any other game. It's... people do it for fun. People play video games for fun, and it's a hobby of people. And some people, it's their job to play video games online for other people. And to say any game, whether it's Fortnite, Call of Duty, GTA, whatever you want to put as the video game of blame for this shooting, it's... video games, again, it's friendship and it's community. Like, there's so many games that have big communities. And saying the gaming... there's one person that said the gaming industry has too much power, and that's why this happens. Let's see. This person said, if video games made people killers, then I would have a monopoly... I would have been a monopoly real estate mogul by now, or a race car driver, or a baseball player. That's the thing. If they're taking the violent video games make people shoot people, what about these other games? What about sports games? They're not making you... you don't play 2K and end up on the basketball team. You know? Driving games is a little bit different. You can end up making it into the sport, because if you do like the simulators, but that's a different story. Like, if you're gonna purely sit and say, you played Call of Duty, you caused a shooting, there's nothing to that. That's not true. And if you sit and play 2K, you're not gonna make the NBA. I mean, you can make the 2K league or whatever, but you're not gonna play 2K and make the NBA. And like, there's no correlation there. This person says, I play video games every day, for most of the day. I also know heavy metal music. I couldn't even imagine harming another human being. Let's see, what else do we have? This says, games like Call of Duty encourage gun violence. Right, and Splatoon 2 can encourage people to paint the floor. This person wrote, we keep having this argument over and over, and all the evidence points to the contrary. Video games helped me through the darkest point of my life and offered me an outlet when I had nothing else. Video games do not cause violence. The next one says, saying Call of Duty causes gun violence is like saying Mario Kart causes car crashes. This person said, video games helped me raise $10,000 to help sick kids, make lifelong friends, secure a great job. So this person wrote, Fortnite didn't cause El Paso or Dayton. That's the cities where it happened. Call of Duty didn't cause Parkland, which was the one in Florida. Halo didn't cause Sandy Hook, and Doom didn't cause Columbine. It's just whatever game gets blamed at the time. Video games are just the latest boogeyman for those who were unwilling to accept the blame. That goes to the same tweet that I read. So the CEO of Take-Two said, after Donald Trump had his comments about video games, said, blaming entertainment is irresponsible and moreover it's disrespectful to the victims and their families. Now, Take-Two is the company that makes GTA. They own Rockstar. Now, Take-Two is one of those, like, super money-hungry companies, so I'm not super big of a fan of them, but the statement is true. The video games entertain people. It's like saying you watched a movie and you wanted to shoot somebody. Video games are like movies and TV shows that you play. You can look at it from that standpoint. There's a bunch of people saying this stuff. Then this just has that same chart. This says politicians blame video games for the El Paso shooting. It's an old claim, not backed by research. This says family holidays explain more violence than gaming. This says there's strong. Oh, what's this go to? This person basically tweeted that there's a higher consumption of violent video games, and then violent crime rates have gone down. So, again, it's just so obnoxious to blame video games for any of this stuff. I've been seeing it all day, and I'm sure many people have as well. So basically this says here, it's basically showing that every place has access to video games, every country, including violent ones. And again, the only one that has a lot of these shootings is America. It's just... yeah. I don't know. I'm just looking at I don't really know what to say to any of this. Like, there's just... I've said what I gotta say. Video games and this stuff is just... it's terrible, these shootings that happen, and then to see the blame multiple times deflected to something else. I don't know. it's obnoxious, and every single time that there's something that happens like this, it's always just blame this, blame that. When it's clear cut, people having guns is a factor of this. Now, of course, there's other solutions to figure out how to help these people that have these issues, or figure out a way to prevent people from becoming radicalized. But taking away guns takes away a way for people to do these acts. If you get rid of guns, there's a lower chance for these to happen. Guns are super accessible. You can go to a store and be like, I'm going to buy a gun. There's such an easy access to it. It's harder to get a lot of things than a gun. In America, it's easier to buy a gun than plenty of things. The checks they do for guns are not great. So we have to have better checks for guns for people to buy them, and ban guns. I don't care if the Constitution says from 18 something you have the right to bear arms. We could change that shit. It's the way that it works. The Constitution's been changed. We've added things to it before. You can take things away from it just as easy. It's super, super obnoxious. If people actually want to care, and I think people would. I feel like a majority of people, you would have a lot of pushback, but there'd be a majority of people that'd be willing to turn in their guns or get rid of guns to stop having shootings like this. That's that. So thank you all for watching this long video. Comment down below your thoughts on this video and topic, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. We'll be back with more videos that are fun. If you guys want to check out me playing video games, and then, not being violent after playing them, go check out some of our other videos. We got some great things coming up for you guys this week. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.